Padre Pio saw the same spiritual pattern again and again, not once or twice, but thousands of times, in souls that came before him weary, frightened, wounded, and almost unable to speak. He did not learn it from books alone. He saw it in real faces, in tears that had been held back too long, in hands trembling from grief, in eyes that had carried disappointment for years. Most people imagine heavenly protection as an escape from suffering. They think that if God is near, the pain should be removed, the cross should grow lighter at once, the storm should stop before it touches the heart. But Padre Pio understood something deeper. Very often, protection does not appear as escape, it appears as endurance. It appears as the mysterious strength by which a soul continues to pray when it has every human reason to stop. If you look honestly at your own life, you may recognize this, not by forcing signs, not by pretending that pain was not real, not by making suffering sound beautiful when it was, in truth, bitter and heavy, but by seeing that if your faith survived something that should have shattered you, that is not nothing. That is evidence, not merely emotional evidence, but spiritual evidence. There are souls who have passed through illness, betrayal, grief, loneliness, family wounds, financial fear, and the slow disappointments that come with age. Many of them no longer come to God with great words. They come because life has cornered them. They come because the world has given them no firm place to stand. They come because something in them still knows that without God, the soul becomes colder than the suffering itself. Padre Pio was solid before such souls, not vague, not soft in the weak sense, not sentimental, solid. He knew that suffering strips away false religion. It removes the mask. It takes away the illusion that faith is only a warm feeling or a beautiful idea. What remains is what is real. And this is why his spirituality can be uncomfortable for modern hearts. He did not treat suffering as a personality trait, nor did he encourage people to build an identity around their pain. He treated suffering as a place where the soul reveals what it truly returns to. He was not mainly asking, "Do you feel deeply?" He was watching for something sharper. Do you still return to God when comfort does not come? Do you still return to prayer when relief is delayed? Do you still make the sign of the cross when your heart feels empty? Because that return reveals whether faith is rooted in God or only in a passing season of emotion. Padre Pio formed souls by training that return. Again and again, quietly and firmly, he brought them back to prayer, back to confession, back to the Eucharist, back to the Rosary, back to Christ. Many who came to him carried the same hidden question. They did not always say it aloud, but it lived inside them. Is God still listening to me? And beneath that question, there was often another, more wounded one. Am I still worth hearing? That is what grief can do to a soul. That is what sickness can do. That is what long disappointment can whisper into the heart. A person begins not only to wonder whether God hears, but whether he or she still matters before God at all. Padre Pio did not treat that wound lightly. In his spiritual direction, he knew that this is where a soul either hardens or becomes humble enough to be held. Pain can make a person bitter, suspicious, and cold. But pain can also make a person poor in spirit, open, dependent, and ready to be carried by grace. He did not answer that wound with theatrical words. He watched something simpler and more revealing. When a soul is truly under pressure, the truth comes out in the small things, not in the big speech, not in the perfect prayer, not in the appearance of holiness, but in the quiet return. The soul reveals itself in what it returns to at night when nobody is watching. It reveals itself when the house is silent, when the body is tired, when the mind is troubled, and when no one is there to praise its faithfulness. That is why, again and again, you see the same humble objects in the hands of suffering people. A worn rosary polished by years of fingers, a small medal kept in a wallet, a crucifix kissed in silence, a prayer card folded at the edges. These are not lucky charms. They are anchors. They are little signs that the soul has not completely let go. And if you have lived long enough, you know why this matters. You have seen people lose their anchor. You have seen someone pass through grief and grow hard. You have seen someone face sickness and become bitter. You have seen someone endure disappointment and then stop praying altogether. Padre Pio did not speak gently about that danger because he knew what happens when prayer disappears. The soul does not remain empty. Something else enters the space. Worry enters. Anger enters. Regret enters. Old wounds begin to speak louder. Temptation finds more room. Despair becomes familiar. This is why he pressed the rosary into the life of the faithful like a lifeline. For many souls, it was a rosary worn thin by years of prayer. A medal carried, like the last thread holding the heart together. A simple devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary that refused to die, even when everything else had grown dark. That is a sign, not a guarantee that life will be easy, not proof that suffering will vanish, but a sign that grace is still moving, because when everything is dark, the soul does not reach for what is false. It reaches for what has carried it before. Padre Pio recognized that reflex. He recognized the soul reaching for Mary, not because life was easy, but because the heart needed a mother. Here is the part that strikes deeply. Padre Pio warned souls not to chase spectacular signs. He knew how easily curiosity can disguise itself as faith. He knew that many people want lightning, visions, unusual experiences, or dramatic confirmations. But heaven's protection, especially the maternal protection of Mary, does not usually arrive with noise. It often comes quietly, like a mother's hand keeping a child from collapsing when no one else sees. If you have ever held yourself together in a bathroom so your family would not see you cry, you understand something of this. If you have ever sat alone in a car and simply breathed because you did not know what else to do, you understand. If you have ever whispered one prayer as though it were the last thread between you and despair, then you already know the kind of protection Padre Pio was pointing toward. Not always the protection that removes the cross, often the protection that keeps you standing beside it. Picture a kitchen light left on late at night, a bill lying on the table, a phone that has not rung back, a body that feels older than it used to. A heart that does not have the strength for long speeches or beautiful words. So, you do the smallest thing you can still do. You reach for one prayer, one bead, one whisper, not because you feel strong, but because you are trying not to fall apart. A confessor like Padre Pio recognized that moment. He knew that such a moment is not small. It is often the place where a life is either quietly protected or quietly lost. There is one humble sign of that protection that appears again and again. It is not a dramatic miracle story. It is not a promise of a painless life. It is something you can recognize in your ordinary routine. You return to prayer, especially the rosary, even when you feel nothing. Do not pass over this too quickly. Many hear this and think it is too small, but it is not small. If you still return to prayer when you feel nothing, you possess something many people have lost. You have a living thread, and when Mary protects, she often protects that thread first. Because if the thread survives, the soul can still be drawn back to God. Padre Pio's insistence on the rosary was not sentimental. It came from spiritual experience. Thousands came to him with fears, doubts, confusion, scruples, sins, regrets, and wounds that had followed them for years. Over time, he saw something constant. Those who abandoned prayer often lost their interior peace completely. The mind does not stay empty. When prayer leaves, something else fills the room. Worry fills it, anger fills it, regret fills it. The endless replay of old conversations fills it. The imagination becomes a battlefield. The soul becomes tired not only from suffering, but from being dragged around by its own thoughts. Padre Pio did not romanticize this. He understood the interior life as a battleground, and for that battleground, he gave people a steady weapon. The Rosary is not a charm. It is not a bargain with God. It is not a way to control heaven. It is a rhythm of prayer that interrupts panic. It is a holy repetition that breaks the spiral. It is a humble path by which the mind is brought back to Christ through the hand of Mary. He urged souls toward it because it is simple, because it is repeatable, because it can be prayed on the worst day, because even when the heart cannot form great meditations, the fingers can still move bead by bead, and the lips can still whisper the holy names. That is why the Rosary works when life becomes ugly, not because it makes life easy, but because it keeps the soul from being devoured by chaos. Those who kept even a small rhythm of prayer often survived the storm. This is why people so often saw Padre Pio holding the Rosary, not because his own life was easy. It was not. His days were filled with long hours of confession. His body carried immense suffering. His hidden spiritual battles were severe. Yet through everything, the Rosary remained in his hands. People who watched him began to understand something quietly powerful. The Rosary was not merely repetition. It was a path, a slow path, a path that helped the soul walk with Christ and Mary through the mysteries of life: joy, sorrow, sacrifice, glory, and hope. These are not distant mysteries. They are the mysteries every human life eventually enters. There is joy, and then it passes. There is suffering, and it tests us. There is glory, but it comes through the cross. There is hope, but it must be guarded. Sometimes the simple act of letting the beads pass slowly through your fingers can calm a heart that has been racing all day. One bead, one breath, one prayer, not rushing, not performing, not trying to feel holy. Simply walking. If you can, even now, place your thumb gently against your finger as though touching one bead. Breathe slowly, and with the breath, say quietly within your heart, "Mary, take care of this." Do not force emotion. Do not demand consolation. Let the body grow still so the soul may listen again. Padre Pio understood something many forget. When the body calms, the soul can begin to hear. Fear shouts, panic confuses, but humble prayer steadies the inner room. Many souls who came to Padre Pio later found that when fear overwhelmed them, this simple return to prayer gave them strength again. Not instant answers, not immediate solutions, but stability. And for many people, especially after long years of burdens, stability itself is a mercy. To get up again, to keep loving, to keep showing up, to carry a cross without becoming cruel, that is no small grace. Padre Pio respected that kind of strength because it is real. It costs something, and it is usually invisible. Faith does not always feel strong. Sometimes faith feels dry. Sometimes it feels almost mechanical. Sometimes a person kneels to pray and feels nothing. The words are there, but the warmth is gone. The habit remains, but the consolation seems absent. This is where the real interior struggle begins. There are moments when a soul sits before God and wonders, does he still hear me? There are times when the hardest part is not open rebellion, but fatigue. You are still doing the right things, but you no longer feel the comfort you once felt. You pray, and nothing seems to move. You go to church, and your thoughts wander. You try to lift your heart, and it feels far away. Then the whisper comes. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I am too late. Maybe I have wasted too much time. Padre Pio met souls precisely there, not with shame, but with direction. He knew that dryness does not always mean failure. Sometimes dryness is the place where faith becomes mature. The brutal truth is that dryness is where many people quit, not because they stop believing immediately, but because they stop returning. They become discouraged. They say, "What difference does it make?" They let one missed prayer become many. They let one cold day become a new way of living. Little by little, the thread weakens. Padre Pio did not allow people to confuse dryness with abandonment. Dryness is not always God leaving. Sometimes it is God purifying love. Sometimes it is God strengthening the soul beyond the need for constant sweetness. Sometimes the Lord permits the heart to walk without feeling, so that faith may become an offering and not merely a comfort. Consolation is a gift. Faithfulness is a choice. When consolation disappears, the choice becomes visible. It is easy to pray when prayer feels good. It is heroic to pray when prayer feels empty. And yet, many souls continue. They kneel, they whisper, they touch the beads. They return to the same prayers without drama and without applause. That continuation, that quiet decision not to abandon God, is one of the deepest acts of faith a soul can make. If you have known this battle, you are not alone. Doubt, fatigue, distraction, silence. These are not strange experiences in the life of faith. Many saints walked through deserts. Many holy souls prayed without consolation. Many faithful hearts continued toward God while feeling very little. Padre Pio knew that at the very moment when many people think about giving up, something unexpected can happen. They discover a shelter they had not noticed before. Not a shelter that removes suffering, but one that keeps faith alive inside suffering. He often helped souls understand that the protection of the Blessed Virgin Mary must not be misunderstood. It does not mean a life without trials. If protection meant exemption from suffering, the saints would have suffered the least. But in reality, many of them suffered greatly. Mary's protection works differently. It protects the soul. It protects perseverance. It protects the desire to return. It protects the fear of God. It protects the fragile flame of faith that refuses to die in the dark. If someone told you that Mary's protection means you will never suffer, they prepared you for disappointment. Padre Pio did not live in such a world. His was not a spirituality without suffering. It was a spirituality in which suffering became a road, and on that road, Mary walked as mother. Protection often looks like this. You are wounded, but you are still turning toward heaven. You are afraid, but you still pray. You are tired, but you have not surrendered your soul to bitterness. You are confused, but something in you still wants God. That is protection. Not always the removal of pain, but the preservation of the soul within pain. Many people later look back over their lives and notice a pattern. Every time they drifted too far, something quietly brought them back. A prayer remembered from childhood, a rosary found in a drawer, a mass entered, almost by accident, a sudden desire to confess, a church door open at the right moment, a line from a homily, a memory of one who prayed for them. Padre Pio would not have treated such things as meaningless. He saw in them the tender guidance of grace, not loud, not theatrical, not always easy to explain, but steady. And sometimes the first clear sign of Mary's protection is simply this: you keep returning to prayer. That return is the doorway. Because once you recognize the return, you can begin to recognize the three quiet signs that often grow in a soul walking under her maternal care. They are not slogans, they are not decorations. They are not badges of spiritual superiority. They are signs that grow slowly, like something living. You must look honestly, not to judge yourself harshly, not to pretend, but to locate where you are. One sign may be strong in you, another may be weak. Padre Pio's spirituality is not about pretending to be advanced. It is about strengthening the weak place, quietly and steadily, with humility. Even after years, even after mistakes, even after discouragement, the soul may still return like a child who knows where home is. Before naming those signs, make a small act of trust. Not a dramatic act, not an emotional display, a simple one. Open your hands slowly before God as though you were holding something fragile. Think of one worry only, not all your burdens at once, just one: your family, your health, loneliness, a difficult decision, a wound you cannot heal, a fear you do not know how to speak. Place that worry, in the silence of your heart, into Mary's maternal care. Then say quietly, "Mary, take care of this." Again, with more surrender, "Mary, take care of this." Remain still for a moment. Breathe. Do not try to solve everything at once. Do not try to feel holy, just in trust. Small acts of trust repeated over time become great strength. Padre Pio understood this. The soul is not usually rebuilt in one dramatic instant. It is rebuilt through repeated returns. One prayer today, one confession after falling, one mass entered with a tired heart, one rosary prayed without sweetness, one act of surrender when the mind wants control. The road of faith often feels like walking through a storm. Not a soft rain, but a storm that tests every weak place. Padre Pio often helped souls understand the spiritual life through an image like that of a pilgrim walking under a mantle. The storm still exists. The wind still blows, the rain still falls, but the mantle protects the heart from freezing. Mary's care is often like that mantle. The trouble does not always vanish. The cross does not always disappear. The unanswered questions may remain. But under that mantle, the soul is kept from becoming cold. It keeps walking. It keeps praying. It keeps turning toward Christ. Picture the pilgrim again. Rain strikes without permission. Wind enters every exposed place. The road is long. The body is tired. Yet the pilgrim keeps moving, not because he feels strong, but because he is covered. Under that mantle, certain holy habits begin to form like footprints in the same direction. Not to impress anyone, not to appear devout, but to survive the road and remain faithful. Those who walk under Mary's maternal care often develop three quiet signs. The first is that they return to the rosary again and again, especially when life becomes heavy. Not because they always feel devotion, not because the prayer is always sweet, but because something in them knows that the rosary keeps the soul close to Christ through Mary. When fear rises, the hand reaches for the beads. When grief comes back, the lips begin again. When sleep will not come, the Hail Mary becomes a small lamp in the night. This is a profound sign. The soul that still reaches for the rosary has not surrendered completely to despair. It still knows where to go. It still knows that a mother is near. The second sign is that something in the soul is drawn back to the Eucharist, not merely as a habit, not merely as obligation, but as hunger. Sometimes this hunger is strong and clear. Sometimes it is very quiet. It may appear as a desire to go to Mass. It may appear as an urge to enter a church during the day. It may appear as the need to sit before the tabernacle without saying much at all. There are moments when you walk into a quiet church and sit down, and for the first time all day, your soul stops bracing for impact. Life is not fixed. The problem has not disappeared. The phone may still be silent. The diagnosis may still be frightening. The family wound may still ache. But you are near the center again. The Eucharist is the center because Christ is the center. Padre Pio lived this. His life was built around the altar. His strength did not come from avoiding suffering. It came from remaining with Christ inside suffering. A soul under Mary's care is always led more deeply to her Son. True devotion to Mary never ends with Mary alone. She brings the soul to Jesus. She teaches the soul to stand near the cross without running away. She teaches trust, silence, surrender, and fidelity. The third sign is a childlike instinct that turns to Mary in hard moments. Not to demand outcomes, not to command heaven, not to avoid the will of God, but to stay close. The soul begins to whisper to her as a child whispers to a mother. It may be as simple as, "Help me." It may be, "Do not let me fall." It may be, "Take care of this." It may be nothing more than her name spoken in sorrow. This childlike instinct is not weakness, it is humility. Life teaches us to control everything. Age teaches us that we cannot. Suffering tears away the illusion. Faith gently leads us back to trust. These three signs are not guarantees of an easy life. They are signs of a soul walking under protection, returning to the Rosary, being drawn to the Eucharist, whispering to Mary with childlike trust. Padre Pio lived these signs with extraordinary consistency. The Rosary in his hands, the Eucharist at the center of his life, an immense love for the Virgin Mary. And those who observed him understood something that words alone could not teach. His strength did not come from the absence of suffering. His strength came from fidelity within suffering. This leads to a final and quiet question. At the end of life, the question is not only whether Mary protects, the deeper question is whether we have learned to walk as trusting children again. Life makes us guarded. Wounds teach us to defend ourselves. Disappointment teaches us to expect less. Betrayal teaches us to close the heart. Fear teaches us to control. But grace works in the opposite direction. Grace teaches the soul to open again, not foolishly, not without discernment, but humbly before God. Think of the road you have already walked, the storms you survived, the nights you endured, the burdens you carried in silence, the prayers that seemed unanswered, the times you almost stopped believing, the moments when you were sure you could not continue, and yet somehow you are still here, still seeking God, still listening, still hoping, still returning. Perhaps that itself is a sign that you have not walked alone. Now take one more quiet moment. Relax your shoulders. Let the face soften. Let the breath become natural. Bring to mind one burden you have carried too long. Not the whole story, just one weight. Place it beneath Mary's care, not because it will necessarily disappear at once, but because you do not have to carry it alone. And remember the three patterns. The Rosary that draws you back when your mind is troubled. The Eucharist that calls you to the center when life pulls you apart. The childlike whisper to Mary when you are too tired for many words. No pressure, no performance, just recognition. If even one of these is present in your life, even in a small way, thank God for that thread. Small threads are often how God pulls a soul back from the edge. Do not despise what is small. A small prayer can be the beginning of a return. A small act of trust can become a habit of surrender. A small desire for God can become the first light after a long interior night. And if you are struggling, do not conclude that you are abandoned. Say simply, "Help me return." Sometimes the strongest faith is not loud. Sometimes it is only the quiet decision to keep walking. Padre Pio would often lead souls back to this simplicity. Do not measure God's presence only by how you feel. Feelings change, consolations come and go, the heart has weather, the soul has seasons. But grace is deeper than feeling. Measure, instead, whether you still return. Because the return is where grace meets you. The return is where Mary mothers you. The return is where Christ steadies you. If you return again tonight, even once, that is already a victory the enemy hates. The enemy does not always need you to deny God openly. Sometimes he only wants you to stop returning. He wants the rosary left untouched, the church avoided, the prayer postponed, the small thread abandoned. Do not give him that victory. Do not search for the spectacular while neglecting the faithful. Do not wait for great emotion before you pray. Do not wait to feel worthy before you return. The sick need the physician. The weak need strength. The tired need rest. The sinner needs mercy. Hold on to prayer. Hold on to the rosary. Hold on to the Eucharist. Hold on to Mary's hand. Above all, hold on to Christ. Step by step, the road will lead you home.